Okay, guys. Yeah, welcome to this evening. We just thought with changing circumstances with how the race season's going to unfold for many people, we thought it'd be we're getting a lot of demand off athletes to get racing, and obviously time trialing looks like could be one of the first things that we're going to be allowed to do under government restrictions. Certainly in England, I know the other nations are lagging behind a little bit. So Bex and I just got talking about it, and just a lot of chatter amongst TTT athletes about, oh, I'd like to give that a go, but there seemed to be a feeling of people were a bit reserved to get into what they see as bike racing, and I think people sort of see time trialing as a bit of a dark art or something, and we just thought we'd try and help everyone realize that we've been into this for years, and it's a really friendly, easy to access, really fun, low key event that you can get into. So for those that are joining us that don't know who Bex and I are, so Bex is actually new to the coaching team with Total Tri, but has been involved with us as a company for years now, actually, haven't you, Bex? So
yeah,
and comes from a long background in racing triathlon, but also 15 years ago, I think you started racing time trials, didn't you?
Yeah.
You took it up with sort of no idea what you were doing, and I think 2016 you won a national title in the time trial. So you starting from small beginnings, you did very well with it. It was actually the team time trial, which if everyone that's into Zwift team time trial at the moment, you think it's hard on Zwift. You want to try doing it in the real world, you've actually got to move around each other on the road properly as well. So so Bex is obviously a dab hand at this, and I also, we know, and Bex will come on to this later, we there's definitely a lack of women doing this, and I don't know whether that is again just nervousness around being around, it's all, I don't know, it perceived as an elitist thing, and it really isn't. So I think Bex is keen to dispel some of those myths. As for myself, anyone that doesn't know me, I am one of the head coaches at Total Tri. I've been racing triathlon for a long time, come from a background of cycling, and I've done quite a lot of time trialing in my life. I do some bike fitting and stuff like that, so time trialing position is very much part of my day-to-day job. So I'm going to hand you over to Bex now. She's going to take you through the first part of what we're going to discuss, and we'll try and break down time trialing into the simple sport it really is for you.
Thank you. If anyone's got any questions, just feel free to pop them in the chat, and we'll either answer them as we go or answer them at the end. We'll see what we get as we go. So yeah, feel free to ask any questions. First thing, starting with the absolute basics of what is a time trial. Some of you may know, some of you may not know, so we're going to start with the basics. It is as simple as riding your bike as fast as you can from one point to another. That is it. The distances can vary from 10 miles to 100 miles, and if you're looking for a real good challenge, some people do 12-hour time trials and 24-hour time trials, and I know there's a couple of people on. I've definitely seen one that's done a 12-hour before. It is not a mass start like you see on the telly in the road racing. You start at 1 minute intervals, which is why it's going to be perfect for COVID, because it is super easy to social distance. Basically get a number allocated, pop it on your back, and you go off at the number past the hour. So if I got number 29 and the start time was 6 o'clock, I would go off at 6:29. It is that simple. You don't need to worry about getting lost. There are marshals on the course, and they are at every turn, so they will direct you. However, we would recommend that you have a rough idea, that you know where you're going, because if you're traveling quite fast, you probably do need to know where you might be turning left. But that, in basic terms, is a time trial. And as Phil said, I started 15 years ago, because my husband did a triathlon, and we both turned up at a local time trial on a bike with no idea what we were doing, and just rode round. That was it.
And I think that's a way a lot of people want to, get into this with. You don't need to worry about the outcome of the first event. Just turn up and do one, and you start sussing it out from there. It's like anything you do, isn't it? You just turn up and see what happens. You'll definitely be better in the second race than you were in the first one. So
yeah, I think there is it, and I think we move on to this, but there is a proper mix of people, and anybody from full time trial bikes to disc wheels to complete beginners who don't have their feet clipped in, that aren't on time trial bikes. They might be on a road bike. You literally just need a safe pedal cycle of some sort that's going to move you forward, a backlight, a helmet, and an able body to move you forward, really. I mean, actually, I would always recommend maybe doing the first one without even a timing device on you. Just ride it on feel and see how you get on, or have your device on and not look at the numbers, and just embrace just having a go. I think a lot of people are put off because they think everybody's staring at your time when you finish, because your times do go up on the board, but actually 90% of the people will not even be looking at anybody else's time by your own, by their own time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the same with a lot of things, isn't it? I think go and get what you need out of the event rather than worrying about any pressure of, especially in this weird, I thought this last year with people racing after a weird summer of, some people been training hard, some people haven't, some people might have done loads of time trials, some haven't. When you see them put it on the big board at the end of the time trial, I mean, you're only really looking at you and maybe a few people, and by the time you go home, you've forgotten everyone else's time other than your own anyway, haven't you? So it's very much, and when we come on later on the next slide, actually, which I'll probably flick to now, why is it good for triathletes? This is a training race for us. We're certainly not tapering into these events and taking them super seriously. So it's normally a weekend training session for us.
Yeah, and I think that they're really cheap to enter. A triathlon now is an extortionate amount of money to enter. These are, £7, £10, £11, depending where they are. So you get loads of bang for your buck when you're entering one. It's a really, really good training session. I think the biggest shift, I would say, that I made when I started time trialing was on the mental side. So definitely surrounding yourself with people that are like-minded, and training with people who think that way definitely helps. But making that shift into suffering, and it is a skill, and I definitely wasn't very good at it, and it is something that I've developed over quite a few years, and you can get better at it with practice. And I don't know what you think, Phil, but I think people think sometimes it's all about power in your legs, and actually time trialing there's much more to it than that.
100%. It, entering and getting involved in this isn't a dark art, but actually riding your bike fast against the clock, there's a lot more to, I remember years ago, I remember riding a specific time trial 20 odd years ago and realizing that I hadn't been thinking about the race for most of the race. Your mind's elsewhere. You're just thinking about holding some kind of constant effort, and you start thinking about what you're going to have for dinner when you get home. And that is not how you ride a time trial. For me, it's like the only thing you're thinking about is riding as fast as possible, and power numbers go out the window a little bit. We'll come on to terrain management and environmental management and stuff. It's actually about learning to ride a bike really quickly. And I think what you mentioned there about people suffering, it's being being with all those other people at that event, knowing they're, you know, we see it with all of our Zwift sessions, don't we? You know that everyone's in that hurt locker together. And when you're on that bike in that race, you know, you can't go and do a training session like this on your own. You need that number on your back, all those other people that are going to be suffering. And you do, after the race, you chat with people, talk about how it was, and you're immersed in an environment that's healthy for your progress. So yeah, very much. I think, you know, there's a lot more to this than just going to see how fast you can ride from point A to point B in terms of how you can bring this to triathlon. Because to me, a triathlon bike leg it's the same focus. You know, once you're settled in after a couple of minutes, it's a time trial. So
yeah, it is, and the work and it takes a lot of practice to concentrate for that period of time. So, you know, you've got a 10-mile TT that'll take you anywhere from what, you know,
I've got a good anecdote. I remember years ago, my mum telling me a little story about her brother who was really into fishing, and he'd go fishing all day long and just sit with his fishing rod. And she said, like, she was like, God, it sounds really boring. Like, what do you think about for all those hours? And he just said, the fish. And I think about that when I'm about to time trial, you know, like, it's not long, it's an hour, 2 hours, whatever. Think about what you're doing, be like in the moment. You know, don't be drifting off thinking about what's going on around you. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I spend a lot of time riding my time trial bike. So you don't have to have a time trial bike if it's a road bike you're riding, but you need to have ridden your bike, and you need to practice riding in that position. You know, Phil's done a lot of work with me on my position on my time trial bike, particularly last summer, and we fiddled with it a little bit to get it in a bit of a better position. But, you know, a lot of people will switch bikes, and it does take quite a while to get used to a new position. So, you know, think about now when you're doing those hard sessions on the turbo with the TTT guys, about, you know, making sure you're thinking about how you're riding your bike and practicing that. On the locality thing, it is such a friendly atmosphere. You know, you kind of have to turn up and do it to understand what I mean. But you know, if you turn up to your local TT, and we'll come on to what the difference is a bit later, you'll finish your race, and, you know, the similar characters will be there week in, week out, and I'll come up to you and say, you know, how did you get on? And say I did a 30 minutes for a 10-mile TT. They'd probably know that I did a 32 the week before or whatever, and they'd be really pleased for me that I'd done a PB of 2 minutes. They're not asking me because they want to compare my time to their time. They're asking me because people genuinely want to see people get better. And I think for me, that's because time trialists all know how much people suffer when they're riding. So regardless of how quickly somebody does it, there is a mutual respect for somebody that gets himself out there and puts themselves on the line and then suffers to get from point A to point B. But, you know, it's a hard session, it's a good training session, but everyone's got like utmost respect for each other.
Yeah, I think another thing, you know, that in terms of like what you said, you know, they'd be more interested in how your time improved against your time. Than, you know, this is because these people are real cyclists. A lot of them are lifetime bike riders. They haven't just found this sport in later years, or, you know, they live and breathe it. And actually it sort of shines through in you know, the conversations you have at, you know, at the headquarters afterwards, or you overhear people having, like, people just, these guys love cycling, you know, that's the first thing they love. And you know, I think it's actually, I think most people think it could be really elitist and standoffish going to a single sport race like a bike race, and it's actually totally the other way, where it's just a huge love for cycling and it's really welcoming. So people should you know, like, try not to be standoffish if it's their first race. You know, try and have a chat with one of the guys that looks like he's, you know, skin like leather and been doing it for 50 years, because you'll definitely see a few of those guys around. So
yeah, and they'll definitely, you know, they'll be loving talking to you. I mean, people take the mick out of me now when I turn up for a time trial, because the race is like 30 minutes and I'm probably there for an hour and a half chatting before and after, just because everybody wants to chat with you. You know, and if you're riding a course, people will give you tips on riding that particular terrain. So, you know, it's all right. And we riding your bike on the turbo, and I do probably 95% of my riding on the turbo. But actually what a time trial will do is teach you to ride on the road and think about all of those things that you'll have in your triathlon race. So how are you going to pace it? So a really good example, I did a session with some of the girls last Thursday, and we were on a hilly course on Zwift. So it's a virtual ride. However, one of the key things that we were thinking about is, if I was on the road, how would I be riding? So for example, I would not ride at 4 watts per kilo downhill when I was out on the road. Therefore, during that session, I was thinking about my power changes throughout the course and the terrain. Yes, it was virtual, but it's starting to try and replicate that type of pacing that you'll have on the road. And you can put it into practice then in your time trial. And head and tailwind is a massive one. You can't practice that on the turbo. I don't know whether people know or not, but you know, you won't ride into a headwind the same as you will a tailwind. It's difficult if you've got a really good tailwind to put the same amount of power out. So those are the things that you can think about and practice, because it will be windy outside and it'll be windy in your triathlon. So what you don't want to do is have an out and back course, slog yourself to death against the headwind, and you know, have nothing left for on the way back. You know, and there's tips to ride into it with a tailwind better, and downhill when you're running out of gears. You know, there's loads of tips to do that better, to utilize that energy and then run better off the bike when you're in your triathlon. I don't know whether you've got anything you want to add on that bit, Phil.
No, definitely. You know, I think the race happens outside. You know, it's all well and good that everyone's getting very, very fit indoors on Zwift. I think it's a great training tool. Certainly, obviously, we use it to great effect with like a lot of the sessions we do with everyone. But yeah, the race happens outside, and you've got to start getting out there. And you know, for those, of course, you know, we coach people that are you know, central London locations, or you know, busy cities, and it's not always as easy as, you know, me living on the Welsh border going, yeah, I can find some quiet roads and practice a load of time trialing skills. So time trials actually act as that training session for you. You know, and if you are like one of our coached athletes, I think more so than how did the race go, what were the power numbers, the conversation should be more tailored to start with around, you know, feedback on how did you manage the course, the conditions, how can you actually ride faster, because speed wins races, not power numbers. And I feel with what I've watched with all our athletes for 18 months is, you know, we've developed some like unbelievably fit guys now, and our primary concern heading into the spring is making sure that that power turns into road speed, and time trialing is the best way. And like we said earlier, don't worry about turning up for the first one and it not being as good as you expect because Zwift's been going well and outside is a bit new to you. This is just a process, just part of the process. So
yeah, and I think for me, you know, what it adds to you as an athlete, triathlete or cyclist or whatever type of athlete you are, you know, we've all got power meters now, and whilst numbers are great, actually what we all need to be able to do, in my opinion, when we're racing, is make those small adjustments for how you feel on the day. And you can't do that unless you practice it. So sometimes you'll turn up to a time trial and you'll start pedaling and you'll think, bloody hell, I feel really good today. And actually, if you'd normally ride your 10 at, you know, 250 watts, sticking to 250 watts if you're feeling amazingly good might not be the right thing to do, because actually you might have more. And alternatively, you might turn up to a race one day and actually think, do you know what, I can't hit my numbers today. I need to ride it slightly differently. So it's more about making you a bit of a more rounded athlete so that you can make those tweaks, because nobody wants to turn up to a 70.3 distance triathlon or even an Ironman, you know, and not hit your numbers because of, you know, the weather, or it's hotter and your head fall off because you're not used to dealing with something being slightly off. So that's where the massive benefit for this comes in for me into triathlon, is making those small tweaks.
Yeah, like one of the things I would, and again, you've got to be a bit more experienced in the sport maybe to try, but like I would use a power meter in a time trial, maybe a 25-mile time trial. I only really pay attention to it for the first 5 or 10 minutes while I'm settling in for the day. From there, I know how I feel. I know what day I'm on, and I don't really need to think about, oh, I'm dropping a bit of power here because I'm going downhill really quickly. Well, that's fine. I'm traveling really fast. And of course, I'm going to push a bit harder on an incline and into a headwind. And, the number is the number then when it comes out. And another thing is, you could be on not a great day and you're starting to drop power numbers at the end and it starts getting in your head. I actually have a thing where I flick screens on my computer so I can't see all that data, because it's not going to help me get to point B as fast as possible. You've got to know your body for sure. And I think power, one thing people need to remember, we're also hooked on power numbers from indoor training, is it's your body doesn't really work like that. There's a big swing on a good day and a bad day as to what you're capable of, and don't go chasing numbers that aren't there on a bad day. In the same respect, don't stick to numbers that you can beat. So, I don't see, like, especially in shorter duration time trialing, that other than just making sure you don't go off too hard, your power meter can nearly, be a little on the back burner and focus on what you're doing really. So maybe a little further down the line for people that are, and like you said, I think back to people that are really new to this, new to triathlon, new to endurance sport, turn up with I don't know, just have your computer just set to tell you how many miles you've done or something. That's all you need to know. It's going to take you about 25 to 30 minutes probably to do a 10-mile time trial. Just ride strong and hard for 25, 30 minutes and start working it all out after that. So
yeah, I definitely, for first time, is if you're feeling a bit nervous and a bit of pressure, definitely turn up. I rode a series last summer. It was a series of 5-10 miles. Yeah. I didn't actually look at my time on any of them because that's not why I was riding. I was just riding to practice riding my bike fast. So I will very, very rarely, if it's part of a bigger picture, and aiming for 70.3, I won't even look at my time or the results. I'll just ride, have a nice chat with the time trial guys on the circuit, or the women turning up, and then pack your bike up and off you pop.
Yeah, definitely. So I think we've covered like some of this next slide already. We're talking about trying to like dispel some of the myths in time trialing. You've mentioned, any bike will do. I think has to be a road bike, I think, doesn't it? But
you could probably get away with a hybrid or something at a local one. I'm sure they probably wouldn't have an issue. Yeah. I'm sure.
And you do sometimes, don't you, see at local ones, some fast riders just turn up on their road bike some weeks. They might be road racing rather than time trialing, so it's a good session for them. So again, even those guys aren't bothered about winning the time trial. They're just turning up for the training session. Might be a good point to pick up on this difference between open events and club events, Bex.
Yeah, so I think we'll probably, Phil will probably go onto the website in a bit and show you how to enter an open event. But a local event is super, super, super handy. You don't need to enter it before, so you don't go onto a website to enter. You can turn up on the day and ride. Now, there is normally a capacity limit, and that's for health and safety reasons. So you do need to get there before the start time and make sure you can register. But for example, in normal circumstances in Chester, there is a local time trial on a Thursday night at Satan. It's 7 o'clock start. So you get there for 6, you hand your £2.50 over, they give you a number, and off you pop. There's a load of volunteers on the course, and that's every Thursday. So you just turn up and ride, and as long as it's not full, you'll get a ride. And as long as you do need a backlight. Interestingly, a helmet isn't actually compulsory, but it always amazes me that that's not the case. Backlight is, helmet's not, but we would recommend that you use one. Whereas an open time trial, you do need to enter before online on the cycling time trial website. which Phil will show you after. For me, the entry is probably the hardest thing to do, just because it's never really moved forward, and the areas that you enter are under letters. So, for example, round Chesterway, the district is D. So I know that if I'm looking for a time trial, I drop down district D, and that will bring up time trials in my area. That's probably the hardest thing about entering. It is in brackets now. So if you're down in London way, you can pick where you want to ride. But yeah, there are some super fast guys. For me, they are amazing to watch. You can learn loads from them. Don't feel intimidated by them, because they are normal people, but brilliant to watch. You don't need a super fast bike. You just need a bike, road bike or TT bike. I actually don't ride on the road a lot, but I do time trial. And for those that know me, I actually don't really like a lot of traffic. However, time trialing, I feel much safer doing, because there are signs out on the road saying there's a cycling event on, so cars tend to be more careful. There will also be more cyclists on the road at that time, so the car drivers know there are, so they are more careful than when you're just out on your own. So I feel a lot safer time trialing than I do actually on a Sunday ride, going out to ride my bike, as long as you, the rider, are safe and don't make silly decisions. So don't get caught up in that moment if you've got a car that has stopped in front of you and be tempted to undertake them on the inside. Make sensible decisions that are safe.
Yeah. Just interrupting there. It's like I think that's definitely a really good point, Bex, because we've been involved in this sport long enough to, there's been accidents in all sports, of course. And you get warned about riding with your head down, people trying to be more aerodynamic, it's just not worth it. Overtaking cars dangerously, trying to nip out at a roundabout, because the marshals are limited as to the advice they can give you as what to do. It's still for you as the rider to make the decision. So that's why when you said earlier about knowing the course, it's really good. You want to even know the sight lines at the junctions. So in most courses, there's a chance on the warm up to see some of the course, or if they're local, just get used to knowing the course, and just don't take any chances. It's just not worth it. But like you're saying, Bex, I think it's definitely, I don't feel, especially on the more sensible courses out there that are on minor A roads or B roads, I don't feel particularly at danger doing a time trial on an open road. So
no, I am personally, I don't do a lot of riding on the road, but time trialing is something where I actually feel, I use safe riding on the road, but I am very careful. I don't make silly decisions. So, for example, last summer I got stuck behind a tractor. I didn't try and undertake the tractor. I stopped and unclipped and waited for the tractor to go, and that's just luck of the draw.
Yeah, exactly. And these things aren't the be all and end all, are they? So I think the whole rear light rule is a good one. Whether or not people actually enforce it is another matter. But you just get a small rear light, put it on behind your saddle. It's just, you just know you're safe and you're going home at the end of the day. So people should just be, you don't want to run in with a car. So
yeah. And then the last one is a really good point. And I think we can all probably be better at this. Ride it in the context of what really matters. So we're triathletes at the end of the day. I have no idea when I turn up for a time trial against Phil, for example, what Phil's done the day before, in the morning, whether he's in the middle of a block, at the start of a block. He might have, it might be an A race for him, or it might be just something that he's turned up to do. So always try and keep it in the context of why you're doing it. And I do think that is one of the big reasons that puts people off, is that they overthink it and think that they need to do well. You've just got to think about it in terms of the bigger plan.
Yeah. You know what, as well, it also the context of riding a bike is just good fun, and trying to, this is a perfect opportunity to take the pressure off your shoulders. Just go and enjoy riding a bike fast. It just feels good. It's, we actually have, I'll tell you what, actually, Bex, I'm gonna let you carry on. I've just realised I've not got my laptop charger and I'm on low battery. Just one sec.
I mean, I time trial because I love riding my bike fast. It's the thing that I love doing. It doesn't matter to me whether I come first, second, third, or last. Actually, riding my bike fast is the thing that I turn up for. And probably one of the big things that attracts me to time trialing is that social environment that you get, and the people that you know around it, and you all turn up and have a good chat. There is a lack of female riders, and I don't understand why, because actually there's loads and loads of females now taking up triathlon, and all the guys that have been there doing it for years really embrace new riders turning up, male or female. But definitely, I spoke to a lot of the guys last year and said I'd love to get more females riding, because I don't understand why more females aren't turning up, and they literally embrace any new riders turning up. So definitely give it a go.
Yeah, good. So just interjecting with a question there from someone, a time trials done in age groups? Yes, they are. They're actually broken into seniors, and then V40, V50, and they will break the results down by age groups. What for anyone over 40, there starts to become, you might have to remind me the term here.
It's having a vet standard, isn't there? There is a vet standard. The
vet standard, and it's basically for every year older you get, there is a deduction of the time. So yes, the overall race is still won by the fastest rider, but there's a secondary race going on for the fastest rider on standard. So a vet, like I'm 41, so I will actually, in the race on standard, if I'm only 30 seconds behind the winner, I might actually win the race on standard. And look, when people are chasing prize money and stuff, time trial is not the place to go. You get some rather small checks land through the post if you win a time trial. I think I remember winning a time trial and getting 20 quid once. So, but look, it's the token thing of it. And you will they only break things down into any kind of age group or category in the open events, which I'll show you how to enter in a second.
Yeah, I'm just going to look at some of the other questions. I'll have a read of them. So Hannah, my local one, asks us to say which half-hour slot to start in. Is there an understanding that the faster riders go first or last? I'm not fast. Or okay, so normally in time trialing, no, they tend to put the faster riders off near the end, but they tend to try and do a good mix. The faster riders will have a 0. So if you are a known fast rider, you will get a special number. I think that's more just like a traditional thing now, isn't it?
It's also to split the fast riders apart so that you generally don't have, you're not catching people too slowly, I think, as well. But yeah, I think there's also just a bit of kudos, isn't there, to having a 0 number on your back or something. So
yeah, if you get a 10 or a 20 or a 30, then you probably, it's a bit of kudos from the organisers for sure. Our time trial, Phil's done the time trial as an age group. Phil, show us the website in a minute. Claire, there's Satan on a Thursday, and then there's the cycling time trial website.
Sorry, Bex. I was just going to say, actually, just going back to these local time trials, we obviously know where our local time trial is, but it's actually a bit more complicated. Each week it's ran by a different club. So we know you can just turn up, but actually if there's road works, it might get cancelled or moved to another course. And we sort of all just know where to look to find that information out on the day. And that really, for anyone in other areas looking for their local information, it normally is your local cycling club is who to contact. They normally just have it on their website these days, or their Facebook group or whatever. But and you can also, you're a member of a triathlon club, whatever, but a lot of people are also a member of a cycling club. you know, and it's just good to get into that part, you know, like Bex, you're a member of Chester Road Club, aren't you? You know, and it's just good to be part of your local club. You'll hear about all the events that are going on, and they'll even put other random events on, won't they? Like we have, like there's a few Chester Road specific ones early in the season here, isn't there? So
yeah.
you know, it's the same all over the country. It's a little bit, it'll take you all a little bit of finding where your local race is, basically.
Yeah, there's the good question coming actually from Holly saying, do you need a license? No, you don't. However, you do need to be a member of an affiliated club. So for example, Total Tri Training is part of is affiliated to the CTT, so you can ride. Chester Road Club, for example, is affiliated, so you can ride. So you do need to be associated to a club that is affiliated. Rosie, I think, is just telling us a useful fact. Facebook has been updated pretty well this week. So, for example, Wigan Wheelers are doing the Rainford Evening 10-mile TT, which is up in the northwest. Oh, good question, Tony. Tony, what about adding a runoff, say a 25 or 50 for a race-specific session? That, I mean, yes, I mean, I would like to run off, but I like to chat after as well. So
I think yes, we're triathletes. Yes, there's you know, you've got to think about the context around why you're doing it. Is running, you know, however, you've also got to think, do I want to go to this time trial and get the very best out of myself from a training point of view and push to the limit? Like, trust me, for example, if you ride a 50-mile time trial at 95% of your FTP, you ain't running anywhere. You ain't running anywhere afterwards. And if you ride 100, well, having done it, you're pretty much getting peeled off your bike. You know, it's just that bit different to riding it in a triathlon. You are on the limit. You do not move out of position. You know, it's just that bit harder. So yeah, I think, yes, running off the bike is fine. You know, we would normally ride back to the race headquarters, take 10 or 15 minutes, get a run in, done. But I wouldn't change how I ride a time trial. A race is a race, you know, in order to turn it into a brick session, which at a lower intensity you could do on another weekend. You know, you're not going to be doing time trials every week, and I wouldn't advise that you do it every week. So
no, I mean, I've done you know, some of the long distance stuff, 50 and 100 time trial, and you know, definitely wouldn't have done any running off the 100 for sure. I think literally I chucked my bike on the floor and had to sit down for half an hour. There's another good question about fueling. So what about fueling before and up to a TT? Yes, you need to think about it. It depends on the distance. So for example, I don't know, if it's a 10-mile TT and it was, I don't know, that's 6 o'clock in the evening after you've been at work all day, you know, you probably try and have a snack at 4-ish at work. And I tend to take a gel or something about 20 minutes before the 10. But in terms of when I'm riding a 10, if it's a time trial, not a triathlon, I wouldn't even put a drink on my bike for a 10 because you won't have time to drink it. I may on a 25 carry some fluid with me, and possibly a gel. At 50, over 50, obviously, then we need to start thinking about nutrition, but that's probably quite specific to the rider. Have you got any other thoughts on that, Phil?
No, definitely. I think, you know, a 10-mile time trial, yeah, you know, eat like it's a training session, couple of hours before. It's 20 to 30 minutes of effort for most people. You've got plenty of carbohydrate in the body. You can't dehydrate yourself nor reach for a bottle of that kind of effort. And you know, you just get on with it. 25 is a bit different. I think it's, you know, the fast guys are riding like low 50 minutes. You know, maybe a gel, you know, or very small amount of fluid with some carbohydrate in. Those riding an hour 10 to an hour 20 or hour 30, yeah, you're going to need a 500 ml bottle at least with some carbohydrate in, basically. 50 miles, you have to have a bit of a nutrition plan, for most of us lot that, riding, if you're riding like anywhere around the 2 hour mark, 50 miles, that's 500 to 1,000 milliliters of fluid, with quite a high carbohydrate. You're going to have to take 100 grams of carbohydrates in at least during that, to keep yourself topped up. When you get to 100 miles, it's, I'm sure no one's going to dive straight into that, but that's a case of having bottles passed up to you during the race. At speed, it takes a bit of practice. It's something worth, getting in touch with us if anyone wants to try one, and there's a bit of a skill to it. And well, if you're doing 12 or 24 hours, then well, you're already mental anyway. So
I do fancy a 12 is definitely on my list. I was going to say for 100, it depends on the race. When I did the 100, it wasn't tabled or anything, so my husband came and met me on the course to swap my bottles, whereas I think the Anfield 100, I think there's a table that you can use to swap, and there's a lot of volunteers.
You can have them passed up to you.
Yeah. So it depends on the event. So you need to do your research really on what you're entering and what they've got on offer. Yeah. But like for me, for like a 50, I'm terrible at drinking, so I have to go, right, I'm gonna have a sip of my drink every 5 minutes.
Yeah, I think a lot of people on this call, obviously with integrated triathlon bikes these days with fluid and actually this is a quick point. Our bikes in triathlon are now very often not UCI legal. So if you were to ride, you probably couldn't ride a national championships time trial race because of your bike actually isn't legal for it. But for all these events we're talking about, really, it's fine to use a non-UCI legal, and obviously therefore use the hydration unit on the bike and the fuel storage and stuff. So and yeah, just someone asked a question about what do you wear. So early season is a little tricky because it's not always that warm, especially going off early in the morning. But you generally can see the pictures on the screen here of these guys wearing skin suits. So your tri-suit, a specific skin suit, or close-fitting cycling clothing is, a great start point for a lot of people. And you will see a lot, you don't have to have expensive aero skin suits to do this. If it's cold, put some gloves on, wear a helmet, and early season races, I've ridden in full length leggings and stuff before now because it's just so, 2 degrees on the start line at 8 o'clock on a Sunday morning. So there's no point getting cold. You just won't perform. And again, it comes back to what are you there for? You're there for the training effect, not necessarily, freezing yourself to death to save a few seconds.
Nick's asked a good question. We were speaking about it before we dialed everyone in, Phil. You cannot turn up if you're looking for something, make sure you don't turn up in your full Sky kit, because you can only wear kit where you're actually sponsored by them. So unless you're sponsored by Sky, you can't wear Sky kit, and that some of them might let you get away with it, but some of them definitely won't. So your TTT kit, if you're a Total Tri member, that's fine to wear. If you're a Chester Road Club member, for example, that's fine to wear. If you don't have any affiliated club kit, just make sure it's not branded, because you're not allowed to wear that. I think
there's another one there that we mentioned before the start. I actually wrote it down. Well, there's two here actually. One is when you're getting ready for the start, you're not allowed to do a U-turn in the road within sight of the timekeeper at the start. You get disqualified for it. You're allowed to stop at the side of the road, cross the road, and then start riding in the other direction. It's just otherwise you can imagine they just have lots of, and this is at the finish as well. So make sure you don't just do a UE in the road. You get disqualified. And then the other little intricacy as well is late start. So Bex mentioned earlier, if you're number 29, you start at 29 minutes past 7 or whatever. If you're late for that start, they will move you to the next available empty slot. And in these open events, obviously some people don't turn up, but you won't get the time from when you start. You get the time from your proper start time. So I sadly got a puncture on the start line of a 100-mile time trial once, had to go all the way back to the headquarters, change my front wheel, come all the way back. and they start the time based off the time I was meant to start on. Of course, I know what time I actually rode, but I think it added 34 minutes or something to my finish time, and you just have to suck that up. So it's just one of these old school rules.
Yeah, so I've done that before.
Just quickly going. So this is the Cycling Time Trials website. This is for the open events that are generally at the weekend. You obviously can have a play around on it, but I'll keep it fairly straightforward here. You go to events, you start going, oh, I wonder what's on in my local area. So one of the dark arts is, what is your local area? So I live in Chester, for example. Well, I'm actually covered by Liverpool and very close by to the Manchester district. And what is weird is, like, for example, when I click on Liverpool, it will filter down to the events by me. When I go down to the event on the 25th of April, this is the Wrexham Hilly time trial in North Wales, in Llangollen, which is absolutely nowhere near Liverpool. So, there's just, when you're getting used to this, you sort of go, you might live in the Midlands. Well, just go through all of the Midlands areas, because they'll cross over weird places. You'll start to learn where the near ones are to you. Do we suggest you travel really far for time trials? Not really. I think in the context of what we're doing, we already do quite a lot of travel to racing. So keep it fairly local, makes it easy, becomes a training session. Some people are lucky they live near really fast courses. We tend not to where we are, but, and I'm not going to start driving to the other side of the country to get a PB on a 10-mile time trial course in Hull, which is where the famous fast course is. It's just not worth the drive. So
it's cheating as well. I never get that. There's no point going to ride a fast course. You go riding fast because it's a fast course. And
also you have to ask why my 25-mile PB is on the A50 near Stoke-on-Trent, which I did go to ride fast, and I will never do it again, because it is like taking your life in your own hands. Yeah. You are going faster because the wind from the lorries going past is actually aiding you. It's not a course I would recommend. So anyway, yeah, you look in your local area. A little bit of a thing is when they look simple, they are simple. What you might notice on some of these races is there's a bit more going on. For example, here, and I don't know whether it'll say it when I go into it.
It's mainly in the title for that one, because that's the Hilly 22. So we've got like 5 different categories. We've got a junior category, which I think that's the top one. Actually, I think some of them have, if you look, if you are on a road bike, a lot of the time trials have started doing a road bike category now as well, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, there is one there. I think what I was going to say here is what I've noticed now is, if you're not sure, even I clicked on the wrong one to enter. When you fill in your date of birth and all that in, it actually flags it for you. It won't let you enter it, so you don't really need to worry. You click on one to enter, and read the regs as normal. You'll have created an account, by the way. You'll have to do that before you log in. Fill in all your details, and go to the next page and pay for the race. Basically, it's as straightforward as that. The art is really is finding the events in your area. So the other filters are obviously by distance. I wouldn't really bother with these filters down the bottom so much, because not every race is categorized up, and you might end up missing a few. And I would say, if you know people in the local area, just contact them about, what the event is. And obviously the easy way to really see where the race is if you click on it, here's the course, you can zoom in, you can see the course profile, and choose your event that way.
Yeah.
I think then once you've entered it, you'll see in my account here somewhere, my dashboard or my events or something. Lower down here, here's what I've entered. lately. This is stuff I've done in the past. And then I suppose the other thing to think about is when you enter these events, and this is the bit that I suppose is a little bit of the bad news. They're limited fields. There's only, even a big field is 120 riders, and I do feel this year we're going to get a lot of people wanting to do these across triathletes, cyclists. Everyone's going to be keen to race. You just because you've entered doesn't mean you're in. You can have your entry refused, and the way as far as I'm aware, the criteria for them selecting you as one of the people to ride, and some races won't fill, and you'll all get in, and that's fine. And you'll be asked if you want to go on a reserve list, and they'll let you know nearer the time. The criteria is normally the fastest time you've ridden before definitely helps. We generally find that they're short on women to fill the criteria there. Women generally get a place in whatever they want to ride. Hopefully that changes to show more women riding. But and then also, they will also have like a remit to have certain amount of people in different categories as well. So whilst we put some stuff on our private Facebook group the other day. I think one of the athletes posted about a fast course over in East Cheshire or something. There's a 10-mile time trial, and suddenly 20 of our athletes have entered. Chances of all 20 getting in, very slim. So they normally let you know. Is it about 2 weeks before they let you know, Bex?
Yeah. You have to enter 2 weeks before. They'll let you know 2 weeks before. Like Phil said, it'll ask you if you want to go on the reserve list. So when I'm entering, I normally don't tick it because I don't want to go on the reserve. I want to know whether I'm in or I'm not.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
As Phil, being female does have an advantage at the minute with time trialing because there is less women entered. You do tend to get a ride. The only other point I'd say is if you don't have a time, it will ask you for a predicted time, and you do need to put something in there. And try not to. I can see now people underselling themselves. Don't do that. Don't oversell yourself, but be realistic. So if you speak to your coach and it's going to take, I don't know, 25 minutes, don't put 28 thinking, well, I'd rather go faster than. All they're going to do with that time is use it to know whether you're going to get a ride or not. So don't obviously put your time faster, but be realistic with it. Don't add a bit on because you think you want a buffer, because it won't add value. 100%. So I don't know, I mean, have you got I suppose the one thing we've not ran through quickly here is race day. In terms of, let's say you're starting at 8 o'clock, I would get myself to the headquarters for probably just before 7. Go in, sign on, dead straightforward process, get my number, put it on the back of my race suit, and make sure that, I'm ready to warm up 25 to 30 minutes before the start, aiming to get to the start line, which might not be right at the headquarters. So you need to know where that start is. You generally warm up to get there. I might want to strip my jacket off, leave it with the start keeper, which they'll return them all to the headquarters later. Whether they do that in COVID, I'm not so sure. But again, ask these questions at the headquarters. I might leave a water bottle there, whatever. I'll then do my ride, head back to the headquarters. And here's another really important thing. You have to sign out now as well and drop your number off. And you don't officially get a finish if you don't sign out, do you? So no. There's a few these are just all little intricacies that you get used to when you've done a few. But all I'd say is be organized for these things. Yeah, you're starting at 8 o'clock. Don't rock up at 7:30. Expect to be able to sign on. There's normally only 1 or 2 loos in these places. If you need the loo, there's a queue, and just get there early and make sure you're warmed up. You will see people warming up on turbo trainers as well.
if you don't know the local area, you don't know where to warm up, it's probably bad form to warm up actually on the course while other riders might already be going because you're starting later on. So people warm up on a turbo trainer just because it's pretty effective, and then, you know, put their rear wheel in and head off to the start line. And you know, you see the guys in the Tour de France doing that before they start.
Yeah, it depends how much faff you want. I always avoid using a turbo to warm up because I don't want to be fiddling with my wheels or
I agree.
like that. But you know, some people are a bit more au fait with, you know, taking wheels off and putting them on and don't mind. But yeah, definitely arrive an hour before. Really, I would say an hour before. You've just got faff time then as well, not rushing.
All right. Well, look, we're getting to about an hour's worth of conversation here, which I didn't really want to go over. So if and I don't think there's any more questions. Oh, Gail, maybe I don't know the answer to that in terms of Central London. I would doubt it, but you feel free to just, I know you've got my contact details. Drop me a line. I'll look into it for you. I would imagine.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, Rob actually dropped me a line to say they have done one in Hyde Park if there's any other Londoners on.
Oh wow.
But yeah, if I find any others, I'll let you know, and I'll drop you a line as well.
Great, brilliant. Thanks, Gail. Appreciate. Yeah. So yeah. Anyone got any further questions? Reach out. You know, I know Bex is really keen to get as many women involved in this as possible. But I think also, you know, people, you know, the blokes that have not done this before and you know, want to be guided through it, reach out to us. Pretty much all our coaches that are involved with us are more than clued up on time trialing, having just been involved in the sport for years. So they'll all be able to help you. So yeah, thanks for joining us tonight. And yeah, drop us a line with any questions. Bex, anything else from you?
No, see you all on the start line at some point.
Yeah, hopefully soon, hopefully. Yeah, cool. All right. Thanks very much, Bex. Really appreciate that.
Thanks both.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Phil.
Cheers, guys.
See you later.